So welcome everybody. This is, like mentioned, special interest group for SharePoint Patterns and Practices Sites Core, or the CSAM core component, and PowerShell. Today we're going to have a few slides to go through and hopefully have a interactive discussion with the people who are joining, so we can actually have a look on individual things. We want some feedback from you guys and the people who are on the call, if we have any open people suggesting feedback. But to be fair, if you're expecting a magnificent, super awesome demos today, we don't have any. So we didn't actually have anything super crazy and super interesting to show for this special interest group, so I do apologize on that. But there's some good topics to actually go through, so hopefully you will give us some feedback when we go through the slides. Just to kind of, well, my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a senior program manager from the SharePoint engineering side, and I'm leading the PnP effort together with many other people who are gradually joining on the call as well. Good. Anyway, let's get on going on the slides. If I get my clicker to work, because there we go. So for those who do not know what this is all about, the SharePoint Patterns and Practices is part of the SharePoint engineering. So we actually coordinate this effort, but it's really a work together with the community towards and helping the community to be successful with SharePoint customizations for SharePoint on premises and for SharePoint Online. So we provide code samples, guidance documentations, monthly community calls, special interest group calls like this one, and we do have a separate one for SharePoint framework and the client-side development, and that's on every second bi-weekly on Thursdays as well. So not on this Thursday, the week after this, and there's a separate invite for that one. The themes are obviously on the new stuff, SharePoint framework, but absolutely also on SharePoint adding model, the remote APIs, because that's what the PMP core component and that's what the PMP PowerShell is all about. So we're manipulating the SharePoint remotely using these remote APIs and configuring SharePoint in an efficient way. There's samples also around Microsoft Graph, because that overlaps with SharePoint and general Office 365 development. AKMS SharePoint PnP is the one URL to remember, where we have all of the links, and there's a lot of links and a lot of assets over there. We are in progress of trying to redesign that page. Let's see when we get that one done. A few things to go through today. So we do have quite a lot of stuff to go through. Like mentioned, we do not have super cool or amazing demos like we had last time. Last time was a pretty cool demo related on voice recognition on iPhone and Teams and Microsoft bots and all of that. And that recording is absolutely available from the YouTube video, this one from the YouTube channel, and this one will be there within 24 hours as well. But we do have some topics to go through, and then let's have an open discussion in the end if there's any questions or concerns or discussions. And yes, indeed, Stefan, Rosberg won, I would say. Rosberg has a Finnish passport, so as a Finn, I'm pretty proud of that one as well. Anyway, so feel free to actually do send any IM messages. We'll jump on them as we go through, but if there's, and feel free to jump in if you don't like, or you want to jump in even with audio during any of the slides, that's fine as well. Within the special interest group calls, we typically don't have too many people participating, so we can actually have that discussion right away, or you can wait until the end and then we can show stuff, we can do demos, most likely out of blue if needed, and let's have an open discussion on things. Good. A few things before the open discussion, and let's open the mic for random stuff. So we're super proud of always showing the statistics on the PMP sites, and one of the things what we've been tracking hectically during November is the growth on the PMP client-side object model usage, so the core component usage and the PowerShell commandless usage. And within 15 minutes before this call, we actually got to yesterday's results, and we bypassed 1 billion HTTP requests going through the core component and PowerShell. And that's massive number. So we do have now more than 3,000 tenants in SharePoint Online production using the PMP core component or PMP PowerShell or PMP JavaScript core component. The JavaScript core component, well, it's included in the statistics as well. So we have, for comparing to the October, we're up to 16.7% on the unique tenants, and on the HTTP requests, we are up to 22% right now. So, and we're missing actually one more day. So the growth numbers are pretty insane, which is great to see. So that people are actually using these goodies, because the whole point of the PMP PowerShell and the PMP core component is that you can be more productive at your work. And we built that together with the community, with community contributions. So it's nice to see that people are being successful and people are using the stuff more and more. And the fact that also the HTTP request percentage is growing faster than the unique tenants implies that the usage on the existing tenants is growing faster than how many new tenants we're getting in. So people seem to be happy on what we're providing. On the unique tenants per PNP version, we can see that, well, these are not in percentages, but we can see that, let's say, more than half of the usage is coming from the past 3 versions, which is good. So versions 16.09, 16.10, 16.11. That version number always relates on the month, so the month of the year. So 16.09 is the September this year, 16.10 was the October release, and 11 was the November release. So it's good to see that people are upgrading on the latest version, because the latest versions always have additional bug fixes and issue resolutions and all of that. On a country side, there's no changes from that side. So the top 5 countries are still United States by far. That's pretty understandable because it's such a big area as well. The Europe is then split on the numerous smaller bits and pieces, except nowadays maybe UK isn't in Europe, well, EU or whatever. Let's not even talk about that. But UK is 2nd, Netherlands 3rd, Sweden 4th, and Germany is 5th. On the top 5 countries, there's a small change. So actually Denmark jumped on the top of United Kingdom and Brazil. And there's actually kind of an interesting small nuance on the top 5 countries based on the HTTP requests. In the Brazil, there's only 15 tenants who are using the PMP core or the PMP PowerShell, but they're still using that hectically because the numbers are so high, which implies again that people are using the PMP core component or the PowerShell as part of migration, which is actually a pretty common scenario. So people want to actually use the PowerShell to automate the customizations to be applied on SharePoint Online, and then before they actually apply the content, or vice versa. It really depends on how they want to approach that. And obviously most used capability in the PMP side, that 943 tenants who are using provisioning engine includes both PMP PowerShell and PMP Sites Core. So it's quite heavily used functionality, which isn't actually that big of a surprise. We knew, and that keeps on growing quite heavily as well. So anyway, thank you for your, let's say, interest and the usage. And obviously this helps on justifying the existence of our initiative. And to be fair, in general in SharePoint engineering, there's no doubts on the value of what we're doing and what we are doing together with you guys in the community, because the PMP is actually a really great channel for getting the feedback in, and also really great channel to help the community to be successful within their deployments. Good. Some kind of things which we've been mentioning quite a few times in the past, just making sure that people are aware of this. We have actually moved PMP repositories in a GitHub, but this is completely seamless. So before you were kind of I was just about to submit something. What does it mean for stuff what I pulled down? It doesn't mean nothing. So the GitHub does an awesome job of let's say, having this capability of moving responsibility, the ownership of the repositories. So all of the BMP repositories have been now moved from the Office Dev organization to SharePoint organization. And this is really around the fact that the BMP is owned by the SharePoint engineering, which wasn't the case in the past, or it wasn't the case last year. The ownership was changed during summertime, and we've been bending on this transition for quite a long time. After testing that with the BMP.js core repository and finding out that it doesn't actually impact anything, we were able to do this without causing any issues for anybody who's using our stuff from a GitHub. Good. And like mentioned, if you have forked stuff, if you have pulled down stuff, if you have pending pull requests, if you have anything, you can still continue using our existing Git forks. They have automatic redirection. It's pretty amazing how well it actually works. So GitHub has done an awesome job on that one. In the longer run, you probably want to refork from the current location, but again, up to you. So it doesn't really mean a thing. PMP Templates Gallery. So first thing where we want to actually have an open discussion and kind of if there's anybody in the call who would like to give us some input around this one. So back in September, probably, I think it was September, we released this BMP Template Gallery, and the whole point of this one is that, well, people seem to be super interested around the remote provisioning, which is a good thing because this is the direction where we're heading in the product as well, but the native product implementation will take a while still, and we wanted to give this opportunity for people to share their templates between the other people in a community. Now, the challenge of this one is that we actually went live with 3 templates. So there hasn't been a massive demand for those 3 templates. We got one more template contributed from Ivan from Knowit Corporation from Sweden. But this has been really kind of a well, the usage has not been growing. And just out of curiosity, you can answer in audio or you can answer in iMessages. Do you see value on doing this kind of open template gallery in the future as well? It doesn't cost us that much, so the costs are pretty, let's say, small. I think probably, and everybody's saying, yes, absolutely. Good. Probably the key challenge is really around getting compelling templates available within the gallery so that people are starting then and new templates every now and then. So we're getting more traction and more traffic on the service.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, Vesa.
Yep.
So indeed, having more compelling templates will help drive the PMP Templates Gallery. Now, maybe it is hard for people to build the right templates. Maybe you miss certain things in the current provisioning engine that make it hard for you to create a template. Like I do know, for example, that there are certain scenarios where you actually need 2 templates to fulfill the scenario. So,
yes.
So some things can't be combined in one template, whereas we only allow one template file, one XML file, so you only apply one template to the site. So maybe there are other things which might hold back folks on submitting their templates. So if you have that kind of feedback, definitely let us know so we can take it in account for the next version of the engine, so we can update the schema to take those things in account and make it a better product.
Yeah, no doubt. And anyway, whatever we're using here, so the PMP Templates Gallery, just to quickly explain how it works, is that there is a repository in a GitHub, and you're able to then do a pull request and submit your template to be available. It will be reviewed, and whenever it will be approved in GitHub, it will be automatically available in the site. So it's a fully automated process. And so we're kind of maybe we have to do some more marketing around the fact that people can actually do this and share their existing templates from their existing sites. So, option for template bundles could be a good one, and that's essentially what Bert was saying. Stefan Bauer commenting save site as a template. Well, technically that's what it is, indeed. But using a future-proof model, not using the classic WSP packages, because they're, well, not going to say anything what I would regret, but they don't work as optimally as possible. And it's good feedback on a
hi,
template.
Yes.
Yep.
It's Ivan. Yeah, and I have one suggestion about that.
Yes,
template.
absolutely.
One issue with developing those templates, it's actually that developing is a bit complicated, and just save site as template, I guess it doesn't work for a number of reasons. And I actually it created a few tools for Visual Studio to make it easier to develop those templates. So I've opened a discussion kind of in that PnP Template Gallery repository in GitHub. So if you have a time, please take a look at those, and I just want to get a feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be no doubt one of the, probably the easiest way if people can more easily create this, because like Ivan is saying, we don't export all of the stuff from the site because we don't export content. So if you want to have any default content within the sites, you would have to manually get them included in the PMP file, and that's really the challenge, no doubt. And that's absolutely good feedback. If we would have a nice tooling, additional tooling, that would help. And let's absolutely follow up on the discussion.
Yep, thanks.
And it seems to be that we have some broken links. Good. Okay, good. So that's actually good. Judith is sharing that with Paolo. Paolo is on a call as well, collecting the input. But good. So anyway, it's clear that there's value on this one. It will take a while. We know that it takes always months or even years to people to catch up and start using some of this stuff. So we're not planning to shut this down. There is and it doesn't actually cost us pretty much nothing. So it's absolutely fine. Now, what we're planning to do, using the similar kind of an approach, we are in progress in the engineering for using this kind of a similar approach for SharePoint framework. And this is just a mock-up drawn by me in PowerPoint, because I draw my stuff in PowerPoint, but that's a different discussion. So a mock-up on the idea of how we would share samples in the future for SharePoint framework. That doesn't precisely relate on the BMP core or BMP PowerShell, but we could actually use something similar also for PMP samples. So whenever people are submitting their samples, they would then submit a pull request towards a certain GitHub repo, from where they would include an image and metadata for the sample, and voila, it would be visible in this kind of a showcase portal. And then people are able to do ratings, and people are able to do and finding more easily what are the samples which are available. So we will no doubt also use the existing tech which was created for the BMP Templates Gallery for other reasons as well, at least for the SharePoint framework samples. But just out of curiosity, how many of you actually know how to find BMP samples from the dev.office.com? And are anybody using that? Would it make sense to have a similar kind of a really easily approachable CMS portal with the filtering mechanisms and ratings also for random random samples and reusable components? And probably the answer is yes, it would. I can pretty much assume that. Yeah, and this is a classic challenge because we have so many samples in the PnP, and we've been trying to get them listed in the dev.office.com under the BMP and code samples gallery, but people are having difficult time of finding that tooling. So having this kind of a simplistic portal for all of the stuff what we're releasing, even the samples for specific areas, would make a lot of sense.
Yep.
So it's good to
having
get
the image
collected. Yeah.
Yeah, I think really having an image together with the sample really helps, because you visually kind of really filter the content and makes it more compelling and easier to find stuff.
True, no doubt. Good. Anyway, Good stuff. Thanks for feedback on that one. So moving along on things where we want to have an open discussion is a SharePoint development documentation. And this is really coming also from SharePoint engineering. And I'm going to show this one in practice before we go back on the slides, if I can move my screen. And I'm going to share my screen. So this is not a super compelling demo, but I'm going to share my screen just to show you the challenge. Boom, 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 boom. And I need to get a confirmation whenever you guys can see my screen.
It's visible for me.
Okay, that's US and Belgium, so we're fine. So we have this kind of an interesting challenge, and I wanted to have an open discussion within this call to get your input in the iron window or audio as well. If we search for a SharePoint MSDN, if I would be able to actually write that properly. So if I go to Google or Bing or Alta Vista or Yahoo, it doesn't really matter, or Lucas, if that's still up and running. Not going to even check that. We can actually see that the number one thing, if I search for the MSDN location of SharePoint, which is the default Microsoft Development Network, that's what MSDN actually means. I'm landing on the SharePoint General Development section, and this is slightly confusing. At least now that we started looking into this one slightly more carefully. It has multiple challenges. So, okay, it has been updated January 13, which is fine. That's fine. And it mentions SharePoint Online in here. But underneath SharePoint Development, we only have SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013. Even though we actually released SharePoint 2016 8 months ago. We do not have SharePoint Online mentioned in any of these elements here as well. And if as an example, if I go to the .NET Client API reference for SharePoint, we are landing on SharePoint 2013 .NET Client API reference, which is essentially the client-side object model for SharePoint 2013. So now the question is, where is the similar kind of a setup for SharePoint Online? The second kind of a challenge on this one is that we do have quite up-to-date guidance for SharePoint development, not just, let's say, adding model development like we have for SharePoint 2013 in the PMP MSDN, but that's a completely different location. And then if we really want to have the latest and greatest, we need to go to dev.office.com/SharePoint, which pretty much kind of concludes the challenge around SharePoint development. How on earth would anybody find these? Because none of these are even cross-linking between each other. Yes, Russell Gove is actually a good point. So people are not even aware of all of these locations. So you can do SPPNP MSDN. That's probably the easiest way to find the MSDN for PnP. SPPNP hyphen MSDN. Enter, and you'll land to the MSDN side of the things. And so this is the PNP MSDN. So all of the guidance, which is absolutely official guidance as well. It is in MSDN. It's coming from engineering. And for example, all the sandbox solution transformation guidance, which we concentrated back in September or August, are in here, and all of that is here. So the latest and greatest is actually in this section of MSDN, except for the SharePoint framework, which is then in the Office 365, dev.office.com/SharePoint. And this is no doubt super confusing. Yes, you could always ask Stack Exchange, but obviously we need to have articles, we need to have tutorials, we need to have a location for people to get started on things. And this is now something which we are working on getting fixed, because this is not an acceptable situation. If we think about this from a SharePoint 2016 perspective, none of these locations are explicitly even calling out SharePoint 2016. which is super confusing. And so how would anybody actually know how to get started on SharePoint 2016 development and what are the changes, because we're not actually even telling that to anybody, which is no doubt a massive deal to tackle as well. One of the things what we also want to kind of change in here is that in MSDN, so if I go for any of these articles, the MSDN is actually pretty old from, especially the SharePoint MSDN is on an old platform. So you cannot actually contribute on any of these. There's no source files, there's no nothing. In the BMP MSDN, you find a bug. Hey, there's a typo over there. Every one of these articles, if I go to, let's say, bulk user profile update API documentation, oh, there's a contribute, and I will be redirected to a GitHub, and I can actually submit a change. And then you can submit a pull request, and we can actually get the MSDN updated in 2 minutes if the change is approved. So that's in the MSDN, the BMP MSDN, and then also in the dev.com/SharePoint, where we have SPFX stuff, where we have also webhooks, all the new stuff here. It has the edit in GitHub capability, so that will redirect the person to a GitHub, and then you're able to actually do a submission if there's any changes what we want to fix. Or typically there are typos, but we absolutely welcome also articles in here as well. So we're in progress of kind of consolidating this one, and it's pretty messy. And Stefan Mumalo is saying pretty well that yes, most important is to be able to get across sites seamlessly. And that's no doubt the number one thing. The second thing is that why do we even have this many sites? You need to be able to find these locations and what's relevant for you. Because in certain cases, it might be in the future as well. The SharePoint framework or the client-side web parts isn't always the right solution. You might fall back on the adding model. When you fall back on the adding model, then you have two different locations to have a look. It's the PnP side of the MSDN, and also the MSDN side of the MSDN, the SharePoint 2013 MSDN side of the story. And that could be highly confusing as well. But anything else, so just out of curiosity, that's really the reason why I added that slide there, is to get that discussion ongoing, maybe in iWindow, or you can switch to audio as well if you want. Anything else, then obviously number one thing is to have that cross-linking between the location. That's an easy fix. That's a low-hanging fruit. The second thing is to talk about and concentrate on, okay, how do we consolidate? We should not have this many confusing locations for SharePoint dev documentation. That's understandable as well. Now, CSAM API reference, REST API reference, probably understandable and required ask as well. One of the things what we've been kind of, let's say, debating on or having a discussion is that would it make sense to create a similar kind of a tool for SharePoint REST APIs as what we have for the Microsoft Graph? Because the reality is that even though, yes, Microsoft Graph is the one unified endpoint to get access on all of the things, Microsoft Graph will never ever have all of the APIs what we have in a SharePoint REST. It's basically impossible because the Microsoft Graph always relies on the native APIs of individual services. So would it be beneficial to have that kind of a UI where we're able to execute REST queries in the same way as in Microsoft Graph? And I think Patrick said absolutely that. Yes. Stefan is also writing. Just to get the discussion also, Swacker has spoiled me. Yes. Yeah, that's the Swacker thing is pretty awesome because it generates the APIs for you, or the documentation for you if it's working properly. Basically, and to be honest, the reason why we concentrate more and more on the REST, and just to be clear on this, the client-side object model absolutely supported, will be supported in the future as well. We're not going to take that away. We'll continue releasing monthly releases on that. But the SharePoint framework relies on the REST APIs. And the REST APIs are also available for, let's say, remote API access from Azure or Node.js or whatever. So the REST APIs are more, let's say, in quotes, compelling for the future as well. So that's the reason why we really want to fix that. Existing REST API documentation is not on the right level. One of the number one user voice entries, I think it's in the user voice, says that please treat REST API as a first-class citizen as well, because we haven't actually done that. The other thing is that kind of an debatable thing is that the way people are learning the stuff is evolving quite heavily. So having a look on for example, the existing SharePoint 2013 MSDN, there's massive amount of articles and articles and articles and articles and articles and articles and articles on stuff. The question really is that useful? Could we, let's say, minimize the amount of articles rather than having too much and concentrate on the, let's say, the basics or middle tier, and then rely on the developers, let's say, skills or interests to further enhance samples or even the articles as well. Because obviously it's a massive investment. When we start this consolidation of these things, it will take quite a long time if we target to get all of the stuff migrated to one location. That's a massive job. So kind of looking into hands-on labs, absolutely valuable, and hands-on labs are valuable. The theory of the behind of things, could we handle some of that stuff using videos? Could we handle some of that stuff using alternative means? Just thinking out loud on the options.
If you would have to choose between having like a detailed CSOM REST API description versus having articles describing, showing the most common used APIs from REST CSOM side, what would be your preference? Like getting the articles showing the key scenarios, but it's not a massive amount of articles, but these articles really show key scenarios versus having each and every API listed.
And that's a fair comment from Stefan. I was there in the 2007 as well, and the only way to get really understanding how SharePoint worked was using Reflector, because Reflector was the free tool at the time. So more details on the core stuff would be more helpful. Video is good, but then we need to have more depth. Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the options, kind of, let's say, one of the options would be that let's reduce the number of articles, so that the articles themselves don't concentrate on or cover too much. But then let's do hands-on labs. Let's continue doing videos, and let's do proper reference API so that people know what are the APIs there. Because that way you can, as long as we give the people the basics, then they can learn the rest of the REST API as well. As long as they know how to do post, read, or CRUD operations, then it's nothing more than going to the REST API and having a closer look on, oh, this is how it actually works. As long as the REST or the reference APIs are in the right stage. How about modular articles, videos showing how to combine them and addressing specific solution? Yeah.
Just also as an example, the guys from Telerik, how they build up their documentations and how to use their tools. I think they do it the right way. They have always cross-linking between demos, samples, and the documentation point. So you can jump from every spot you are to the answer of the question you have.
Yeah.
Maybe this as a reference could be used to look a bit at this and make a plan how to make it better.
Yep, absolutely.
Good points.
That's a really good. It's always good to use an existing sample which works. So no doubt.
Yeah. Smart copying.
Yes. Reusing other people's concepts.
Reuse.
Or reuse.
Reuse is a better word. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Share and reuse.
Sharing is caring. Good. I think good feedback. And good stuff on the IM discussion as well. We'll get that one recorded as well. This will no doubt help us on the internal discussion. There's some internal things which we need to figure out in the SharePoint engineering as well related on the documentation, but we're not going to forget, we're not going to only do a SharePoint framework. We want to keep on doing the old stuff as well. And there's a lot of people who are still doing on-premises and SharePoint 2016 and all of that stuff. So we need to be careful of not just dropping the ball on the old stuff as well. Good. And I'll have no doubt have a look on the Telerik as a reference for the future. Now, some other stuff which we wanted to quickly go through. November 2016 release of SharePoint Online NuGet packages is out. This came out on last Thursday, and I do know that if you are living in US, it's unfair that we released this on Thursday, but it was a normal business day in Europe. Thursday was the Thanksgiving Day, the Turkey Liberation Day. I don't know what is Thanksgiving for, but anyway. But it went live on 24th of November, and it has some good new APIs. For example, the update override version for list item, and that will help you, for example, to modify the modified by, modified at, created by, created at fields in a list, and then running that one, you're able to overwrite those fields in a list item as long as you have sufficient permissions without generating a version. So it's really around the supporting the migration scenarios as well, because people don't want to have additional versions to be created on a list. Something else interesting there, client list.save as template, and it might sound like, hey, what? But it actually makes a lot of sense, even though that is still an STP file, which is slightly scary, but it actually works pretty well in SharePoint Online. So you're able to save lists as a template remotely, and then those will be available for end users to choose from. They're not schema files, they're not WSP files, they are actually STP files, but typically these list templates do not have as much challenges as classic STP files if you used STP files when site templates were using STP files. And a few additional properties as well. The theme CSS folder URL has been asked quite a few times in user voice, and that was added there as well. We are looking into having additional stuff. We are looking into, for example, having capability of managing alerts in CSAM. Personally, I don't understand why would you want to have an email alert sent from SharePoint, but it seems to be a big thing for some people. And so there's quite a lot of asks on that one in user voice. So exposing that API in CSAM, not a massive deal. One thing to notice on this release is this was once again a release for SharePoint Online. So the monthly releases are SharePoint Online. The on-premises NuGet packages are separate, so you cannot use these new properties and methods towards your SharePoint 2016 or SharePoint 2013 environment, unless you use a newer version of on-premises CSAM. Not going to actually go through the whole story on that one in this call, because we do have a webcast explaining how it actually works and what's the challenge behind it. Good. Microsoft Graph commandlet. So this was one thing what we wanted to quickly have a look. Not a super compelling, let's say, slide, but as part of the November release of PnP, the PMP PowerShell, we actually released a new set of commandlets, which were connect PMP Microsoft Graph, new PMP unified group, get PMP unified group, and remove PMP unified group. And those are really for provisioning modern team sites or, well, groups together with the modern team site in SharePoint Online using PowerShell. And now the question is, do we wanna? What else do we actually would like to have in the Microsoft Graph side related on as part of the PMP PowerShell? Any suggestions? The graph is relatively new, and We do know that not that many people are using that, but for example, for creating a modern team site, this is the only way you can actually create a modern team site. You need to hit the Microsoft Graph Groups endpoint to make that happen.
Just to add on top of that, Vesa, so this is not just about making the actual PowerShell commandlets. This also implies that we will have a new extension method in the core library, so you could also use it from CSOM directly once we do these things.
Yes, fair point. No doubt. No doubt. Absolutely a good point. Yeah.
Come on, guys. Inspiration.
Yes. Well, to be honest, it's understandable. That's what we're seeing within the graph, let's say, statistics as well. And so the usage is growing, but I don't think that there's humongous amount of people using that hectically, which is absolutely fine as well. And there's certain challenges around the graph usage. For example, the group API doesn't support right now using an app-only access, and which is a known limitation for the modern team site provisioning, and we are working on that one. But if there's any good suggestions around, hey, it would be super cool if I would be able to use PowerShell or core component or managed code to do X and Y and Z or against these endpoints in Microsoft Graph, just let us know, for example, in a GitHub, because we can make that really easy. For example, creating a new PMP unified group is a simplistic method in the core component, rather than you need to hit the graph REST endpoints and all of that. So if you're using a managed code or PowerShell, it's super easy to do that. And that's what the BMP is trying to do, help people. Good. Did we have something? I think we had something more. Oh, just a reminder on the December 2016 master merge. So the December 2016 master merge, essentially our monthly release, will happen on 9th of December. Typically, we've been doing the master merge. Our target is always the first Friday of a month, and typically it goes to the next Monday because we're slightly always delayed. But this time we are explicitly calling out that it's 9th of December. The monthly community call, where we go through what was included in the monthly release in detail, together with demos, is on Tuesday, 13th of December. And the links and the invites are absolutely the same for that one as in the past. But it's good to know what's actually happening. Good. Let's then open up the forum for open discussions. If there's any challenges, input, suggestions, SharePoint engineering should hear my input because whatever is not good. Just let us know and we're trying to figure it out or help you on the journey.
I have something complex.
Good.
So first of all, we have a customer using PMP, or we are using PMP PowerShell for him. We use Nintex workflows. We wrote a PowerShell action for Nintex workflows and run PMP script to create site collections, team sites, manage web parts on it, manage the permissions on it, and so on and so on. So the big problem is, because we are in remote script or remote PowerShell, we cannot authenticate versus ADFS. I think I opened this question in GitHub 3 months ago, so there was no answer. Maybe I'm getting it wrong, or I'm doing it wrong. Maybe it's more easy than I thought it is. So the problem is we had to extend the web application to an NTLM web application. We are talking about an on-premise 2016 SharePoint server that's in a hybrid scenario. So the ADFS is needed. My problem is when I grant permissions to a user over PMP or CSOM and give in the UPN, so username at domain.com, CSOM makes it to domain name / username, so the Windows 2000 user is added in. But the users that authenticate come through the ADFS channel, and they have no permission to access the site. Has anybody come across this problem or have an easy solution for it? Well, so the best thing would be to can authenticate with Connect PnP Online directly with ADFS without having a prompt.
So I think that this first part of the question is, do we support ADFS? And the answer is yes, but with the caveat that we really extensively tested and broadly tested still today, that's no. Meaning we added support for ADFS into the core library, which I used in custom projects like 2 years ago or so, just having a SharePoint on-premises dedicating against ADFS to kind of connect to the on-premises environment. So that's in there. I think it's also included in PowerShell in the connect commandlet, but not all options. So depending on what you want for ADFS, it might not be complete. I think we support just basic authentication, username, password, or a certificate-based authentication towards ADFS. And the certificate part is not in PowerShell, if I recall correctly. So that should be maybe help you with. And to be honest, I didn't read the issue that you created, Stefan. So maybe I'm explaining things that you already know and tried. So.
Yeah, so the problem is still when I can authenticate against ADFS, but only if I'm live in front of the computer. So it doesn't go with when I give credentials. When I create PowerShell credentials, it won't work because it will always prompt me with the forefront or the ADFS server side to authenticate in the web server in the website.
So with CSOM it works, with PowerShell it doesn't work. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if you create a console application in CSOM, you can make it work. You can, because you should be able. What I did in the past is we had background processes. You just specified username, password, and then those could connect to the using over ADFS to SharePoint. But that was CSOM. I never tried it from PowerShell. Maybe we miss a particular option in PowerShell that we can. And then if that's the case, that should be fairly easy to fix.
Yeah, if you miss options, we can simply add them. That should be a big thing.
So can you confirm, or can you try, Stefan, if you can get it to work with a console application using regular CSOM? Just kind of checking authentication. Authenticate using ADFS and then read of updates and properties.
Maybe I'll get it to test it next year because I have a deadline on Friday about this project. So I will test it afterwards and submit it again.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Other questions?
Yeah. No silver bullets. But still.
Yeah.
Any other
silver bullets? Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes. A long time I took for this.
Yeah. Sorry, Stefan, you said?
I said sorry to taking so long for this question.
No. Don't worry about it. It's a super. Well, we want to make sure that the PMP is absolutely usable in on-premises as well, and the identity handling. How would I put it? At least back in the times when I was doing on-premises, and it's been a while, I have to be fully honest on that one. I was seeing some weird behaviors in the native APIs as well. But obviously the PMP extends the native APIs. If the native APIs behave badly, we can't fix it. If the native APIs are acting properly, we can absolutely make sure that we can fix that natively within a PowerShell as well, or the PMP PowerShell.
Yeah, and actually we can also fix the native APIs.
Yes,
if they're broken,
exactly,
we can push for fixes.
Yes, if the native API have issues, then we are the easiest channel also to get them fixed natively within a SharePoint as well.
Yeah, and especially this ADFS comes more and more with hybrid scenarios, so it will be a big theme the next months.
Right, absolutely.
Good point. So maybe time to set up my ADFS lab again.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Any other questions, comments, feedback? And absolutely, if don't hesitate if you have a long, complex question. That's why we have the special interest group calls. So we have open discussion on things, and so that we remember, for example, if you submitted an issue and it's super critical for you, we then prioritize that accordingly as well.
I have a question regarding self-service site provisioning.
Yep.
Yeah, the partner pack sample relied heavily on Azure. Is there an example somewhere of doing that with, just a PowerShell script running in an on-premise server, maybe reading site requests from a SharePoint list, kind of a skimmed down version without all the bells and whistles that partner pack has?
Damn! I'm sorry for not cursing, but this is such a classic question. Good question, Russell, and it's a good reminder that we need to get the on-premises story straight with the PMP partner pack as well, because we know that the customer, we know numerous customers who have adapted that to work properly within the on-premises, but we do not have an existing code shared in the PMP gallery or the PMP samples for time being. But we're getting this even in Ignite in Atlanta in September. There was quite a lot of people asking around this one. So we certainly need to work on that one maybe during next quarter. Actually, seriously, take time away and make sure that we have a solution for on-premises as well.
Mm-hmm. And the same happened in Vienna as well during the European SharePoint conference. There were people asking for at least guidance to do the porting of the solution from the cloud to on-premise. Maybe we should start just with some guidance, and later on, if really needed, providing also some code samples.
Yeah.
But maybe just the guidance should be enough. I don't know.
Yep. That's a good point.
My scenario isn't completely on-prem. I'm talking about SharePoint Online, but the provisioning would happen just from a PowerShell script that ran every 5 minutes on a local server here, because I don't want to get into Azure as of yet.
Yeah, so you would actually have the requests in the SharePoint Online list as an example still, but then you would have the actual remote provisioning. But how would people actually submit their requests? That's really what would be the UI, because somebody needs to host that UI where they're submitting their request. And in the PMP partner pack, that would be hosted in Azure as well.
Yeah, I was envisioning adding a custom action somewhere where the user could click a link to request a new site. It would take them to a new form of my list request, which would be stored on a central location on SharePoint.
Yeah.
And then they would add a request, gets approved by their manager, and PowerShell job would pick it up and provision it.
Yeah. And we could even use something as simple as, we could actually have just a simplistic flow, fancy UI for recording the requests, and with a approval workflow in SharePoint Online. And then you would have an on-premises hosted PowerShell, which is checking, do we have any pending requests, and let's get that provision. Absolutely doable, but I don't think we don't have any existing IP on that one, but that could be a nice story to clarify how to do that, because that's kind of a simplistic way without Azure hosting. So no doubt, technically doable.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be working on, so maybe when I get it done, I can share whatever I've done.
That would be brilliant, no doubt. More than welcome, because we know that request is so classic. And then adapting that to on-premises would be almost the same story. As long as you get the request to the SharePoint list, then you have a PowerShell hosted somewhere, and that's it. And, that's actually good to know. Brian is working on that one already too. So good.
Who's working on that?
Brian, chatting in the Brian Micheli, who's Brian isn't super visible in the PMP stuff, but he's part of the PMP core team and he's been working on a lot on this provisioning side of the house. Now the question is when there would be something to share. That's from a scheduling wise, because that would be useful for Russell.
Yeah, I'd be interested in contributing to that effort if needed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, that's just Brian. I'm doing it for another customer right now. So I'm doing it in React. and
Okay.
the back end is trying to reuse the job in a common library. Idea would be Azure web job or something that comes on and picks up those requests. There are certain things and certain caveats to doing that, right? Securing your site, for example. Things like enabling external sharing, right? Which we could do from the solution before, and this you'd have to do something more like a request for a site user or some other process.
Yeah, but to be fair, Brian, all of that is kind of from a bigger picture, from a process and design perspective. Those are technical details, right? As long as you have the UI to store the request to a SharePoint list, then it's a matter of, it could be an Azure hosted thingy, or it could be an on-premises hosted PowerShell, which is connecting to that list and checks if there's any items in a queue and gets that provisioned. So
right, and I have a big customer that basically, they didn't want to host anything in Azure. They just want, and they're used to doing all their stuff, using pure, JavaScript. But they asked if we could do this, following that same pattern.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on that now, and I'm trying to have it done within the next 2 weeks. That's my goal. So I can share, I can share what I'm doing, obviously.
Yeah,
so,
yes. That would be a great story to get to the, for example, to the PMP tools repo, or, as a PMP sample as well, and then having that script with the PowerShell. And we can share the responsibilities in the PMP core team as well, because then it's pretty sure that there are other people than Russell as well, looking into the same model, because people seem to be hesitant of using Azure as well, or whatever external service.
Right.
So makes sense.
And I'm not trying to overcomplicate it. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, so
but
definitely
that's,
some...
Now, Brian is trying to make that as simple as possible. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
hey, don't worry, Bessa. Don't worry, Bessa. He's not going to Frankenize it.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
But I didn't disclose anything yet until I could validate a few things, but I've got some things that are coming together, so hopefully I'll have something to share really soon, and definitely would appreciate any help on it. So
yeah. So let's try to get that one moving, so that we get something out. It doesn't have to be always a fully 100% production ready, because anything which is getting the concept shown is good a starting point for others as well.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Good input, Russell. Good input. And we'll get that one in a task list, no doubt. Seems to be that Stefan and guys are talking about beers. And talking about the shadows which are not aligning on the people on the slide. Yeah, that is a fair point. Maybe we should get a pull request and prioritize that as a step one to get fixed. Good. We have 2 minutes, not too much time, but if there's any random comments or ideas or suggestions, more than welcome. And obviously, we don't have to hang in the line. But if nothing else, we can absolutely close the call 2 minutes early. We'll get the recording available in the PMP YouTube channel. We're looking into having then within 2 weeks, we are right after the monthly community call. So let's see if we have anything super new to show on that one, because the monthly community call is on 13th of December. And then we're closing into the holiday season anyway. But typically, there's always questions, there's always suggestions, and your input, and if there's any critical questions, or maybe Russell, as an example, in 2 weeks you can pop by and see if there's any suggestions or improvements or development on the area for the provisioning as well. But thank you everybody for joining, and thank you for your valuable input on this particular call, and welcome joining us on the following. So thank you, and I'll get the recording out in 24 hours. Cheers, bye-bye.